Now, from the University of Okoboji, it's Okoboji Broadcast with Jeff Thee.
Welcome to Okoboji Broadcast, coming to you again right here from the Dickinson County Museum. History comes alive. Mary Dreier is here with me today, and she's brought herself, you got a little friend that you brought here with us today, Mary.
I do. This is my friend Kathy Barth, and she's here for a special reason today because we are going to be talking about knitting and knitting machines and all that good kind of stuff that people used to do back in the day here.
And Kathy, you are a kind of a lifelong knitter,
fiber person.
Yeah, you like to do that stuff, and so you probably, I would put you in the expertise type definition.
I've done it long enough that, yeah.
Because when you came in and you looked at this, you didn't go, "What is that?"
No. I had a clue.
You had a clue. Well, Mary, let's talk about this contraption here behind me.
This doohickey just fascinates me, Jeff. And the reason it fascinates me for a couple of reasons. One is that it's just a cool machine. I mean, you look at it and you know it's older than the hills.
Right.
The second reason is that we have documentation that this knitting machine was brought to Spirit Lake on a covered wagon by the Pillsbury family. You know, like Pillsbury Point?
Yes.
The Pillsbury family, late 1850s, early 1860s. So this has been here forever. And what intrigues me is that knitting machines were even around at that time. Yeah. And for how little space there would have been in a covered wagon, how important this machine must have been to them.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but this is from the Pillsbury family, Jeff.
How fantastic that here in our museum, you know.
Yeah, and then it's documented, you know, and we know that. And I know squat. I mean, I, for a while, considered myself a compulsive knitter. You know, I would be hiking on a trail in Alaska with a knitting bag on my hip and my needles going like this, knitting socks, and my kids would be rolling their eyes. But I really don't know much about it anymore. Kathy has knit and woven and spun forever, and so we invited her today to kind of fill us in on how this stuff worked. And when she saw this machine, her eyes got this big. So, Kathy, can you tell us a little bit about how this would work?
Well, it's some type of a flatbed knitting machine. I have the newer ones, and they're very similar. And I'm sure there's a few parts that are missing, but I've never seen anything like it. And it's really, really, really spectacular.
How would it work, Kathy?
Well, they probably had some type of a stand-up piece here, which I do see in the directions. Well, the lucky thing is that you have this booklet. And it would have held the yarn, and then the yarn would have probably had to come into some kind of a thing that would feed the yarn into, I'm not quite sure, but then it would, these are little needles, and so the needles would have caught the yarn and then been knit, and it looks like you crank it. Instead of, I've got one where I have a piece that I go back and forth with to make the fabric, but this looks like it's been cranked, or it would be cranked.
So Kathy, how would you, like, could you knit a sock on that, or would it be more for flat things?
It'd be more for flat, yeah. They probably just made yards and yards of fabric and made them into scarves or sewed them in together maybe as a blanket, or, you know, this is just so unique that we'd have to do a whole lot more investigating.
Yeah. So what would the materials be that they made?
It would just be a flat knit fabric, and maybe for scarves, you know, maybe they just sewed them together and made blankets out of them. Right. You know, I'm just not quite sure. I've just not seen one.
Yeah, I just wonder
so
if they
unique.
use livestock, if they, you know, to make things. I don't know.
Oh, what would the material be?
The material,
they would have no doubt used wool. Okay. Yeah, wool was sheep, the most prominent.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and wool is only from sheep. Other
tells you I don't know my goats.
You know, that would be a fiber. Okay.
See, this is why we bring in an expert.
Exactly. Kathy, you were talking about the bobbin holder or spindle holder over there. Can you tell us how that would have been used?
Well, if this is part of that machine, which with the decoration in that, it looks like it. And so you, on this machine, you would have wound the yarn on what's called a cone, and then these probably sat here, and these might even be the weights that then held, as the fabric came down and was being made, you'd put the weights on it to hold it so that it would be able to keep going.
Right.
I mean, if it bounced up here, then it would get caught into the needles. So.
Wow.
But that looks like it should probably come with it. The neat thing is that the box is included also.
Oh, that's what that is down there.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's where it was transported
In the covered wagon.
in the covered wagon.
Which would have fit almost anywhere. You know, they might have put it underneath the seat or tucked it into the corners of the wagon. Very cool. And then also you have some of the tools, some more of the weights, and these are the little needles. So it's quite impressive. I have a round knitting machine that's for socks.
Okay.
And so it goes circular. But I've not seen one with the flat bed like that.
Yeah.
It's very cool. Kathy, can you show us a bit of the process of how you get from a hunk of wool to a piece of yarn?
Sure. Did we?
Yeah, here's your wool over here.
I brought some wool, and this is just right off of the sheep.
Okay.
And these are sometimes called locks. And you can see there's still even some debris in there.
Okay.
So back when, they would use wool carders, and they would lay the locks on the carders.
Oh, okay. Is that how they got the debris out then, or is that?
A lot of times, yeah. Sometimes you would do what's called kind of picking to spread it out.
I can tell you, we used to raise sheep on our farm, and it was while I was spinning, and I thought it would be so cool to take wool that had been sheared off of our own sheep to do this. And that was a big mistake on my part because it was so dirty. It was so filled with manure and thistles and just grime that the actual good part of the wool wasn't very much, there wasn't much volume to it. And it took forever to clean it up.
And so what you're doing is just breaking apart those locks and then aligning the fibers in one direction.
Oh, okay.
And then that just makes it easier to work with. So I went from those little compacted locks to this nice, soft,
and
fluffy.
Yeah.
And
easier
then
to work with.
Then you would pull it off and roll it in what they would call roll-logs or roll-lags. I still need a little bit more carding there.
Yeah.
And then this can be held in your hand, and then you would spin it on the spinning wheel.
Oh, okay. And you're a spinner.
I am.
Where'd you learn that?
Well, I bought a weaving shop in Des Moines in the late 70s, and when I bought it, the lady that was the spinning teacher said I needed to learn how to spin in order to sell the products.
Yeah. Wow.
So, but I was a terrible student. It took me all day to get my hands and my feet coordinated. So she wasn't happy with me at first. But to begin with, back when they did spinning on a drop spindle.
Okay.
And the nice thing about this is that it was very portable, and they could just take a twig or a stick from any place.
Oh, okay.
And
serve the same purpose.
Make the drop spindle.
I'll be darned.
And so I don't know if we can get this to work right now, but they would just start spinning it, and then you would draw out the fiber.
And kind of let gravity do the work.
Yeah, and it makes, well, that's why it's called a drop spindle.
Aptly named, yes.
Yes. But the weight of the spindle, and as you fill this with more yarn, it works better and better.
Sure.
So, but this is a very primitive one, and now they've gotten to the point where they're beautiful. And I spin on this a lot of times. This is called a little Turkish drop spindle.
Neat.
And I'm spinning yak.
Yak?
Yak. There's so much more fiber nowadays. You know, back when it was all wool. because they were brought over.
Sure.
With the
That's what they had to work with.
Yeah.
So how is spinning on a wheel different than spinning on the drop spindle, Kathy? And we don't have the wheels set up so that you can actually spin on them.
Not much different. You basically take your fiber and you draw it out, and then the rotation of the wheel and some tension puts the twist into the yarn to make it into like a single. They call it a single.
Okay.
And then later you use the spinning wheel using it in an opposite direction, and then it becomes plied, and that makes a stronger fiber.
Okay.
So any fabric or any product that was made using wool back in the day, using knitting needles and a wheel, or using this fancy schmancy knitting machine that the Pillsburys brought with them, it took a lot of time. It took a lot of effort.
Many steps to the process.
If you had to guess, Kathy, how long it would take to produce, let's say, a pair of socks for somebody, from the wool off the sheep to the finished product that you could wear. Any idea?
In hours, I don't know. But when I spin on my spinning wheel, to spin an ounce of fiber, but that can vary if it can be a thin yarn or a thick yarn, but it takes me an hour.
Okay.
So say I need 4 ounces in order to make a hat, that's going to be several hours of just spinning the single, and then again it'll be a couple hours to put it back on and go in the opposite direction and ply it.
Wow.
So that, and then knitting, I knit probably 2 to 3 hours a night, and if I make a pair of socks, it takes me a week. So.
And that's with modern
Modern
conveniences,
stuff.
going to the store, getting your materials, and, and away you go.
Yeah.
So add all the complications of shearing the sheep and getting it all ready to go, and then starting.
It boggles my mind, Jeff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It boggles my mind.
I asked Mary if she would have, we're in a cold part of the museum, if she could have a sweater made for me today. She says there's one that's been in the works for 20 years.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw you under the bus.
Really. But the fun thing about spinning nowadays is there are access to many, many fibers. But I did bring buffalo, and I have a neighbor that raises 100 herd of buffalo, and I thought this would be good for this area since it was known for some of the buffalo.
Sure.
But this fiber is from their sheddings. In the spring, you'll see they look really messy and awful. And so the Indians or the pioneers would gather those sheddings, and then you need to pull or pick it, which is what I call pick it, and there's a guard hair, and you have to take all that guard hair out. And then it's a very, very short fiber, but I spin a lot of it on my drop spindle, and then I've made this yarn, and then I've also gone and made a hat.
So that's a buffalo hat.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And those are the tiny, tiny needles.
Yeah, I think it's on about a 1 or a 2.
It's like sock size.
Needle. And it's a modern new pattern, but still something similar to what they might have worn.
Of course.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So back in the day, the Pillsburys did not go to Walmart to get their socks.
No.
It was a long, involved process.
It was a long, involved process, and we also noticed that the instruction booklet is under here as well. Isn't that what that was?
Yeah.
For the machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd have to really take that out and study it.
Yeah.
And see.
Yeah.
Also, they made their own knitting needles, that they could carry along with them. Then they became more fancy, and then these were also a way to carry the needles, and that's how fine some of the needles would have been to start out with.
It's so fine.
And to knit something like these little baby socks.
Okay.
So, and they also knit, this is a pair of probably special gloves that might have been for a wedding, or a lot of times this fancy work would go into
trousseau?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
And so they would knit, I brought some lace, they would knit the lace that would go on pillowcases and sheets. And That would be part of the dowry too.
And this all came about because they did not have cell phones to distract them.
That's right. Absolutely. Well, the amazing thing for me is that not only did the women do all the cooking, all the canning, probably took care of the small animals, cleaned, did everything else, but they still found time to make these wonderful products, that have lasted forever.
Sounds like a 24/7 job.
Yeah.
Kids and all the other things, and then doing this. And I can only guess, I mean, the Pillsbury family brought this in, but this had to have been quite something to have at that, in that era.
I bet not many people had them.
Exactly. Yeah. So just fascinating.
During the industrial area, when they came up with these.
Yeah.
A fun fact about the walking wheel is this was often found and brought across the country in the covered wagons because it can be taken completely apart.
Sure.
This comes apart. The wheel would be put in the side of the covered wagon.
Right.
And the bed of the spinning wheel could tuck under. The legs come off.
Right.
So, and even with the smaller wheels, these can come apart pretty much.
Okay.
And so that's how they were able to get them here.
And then they just put them back together when they got to their destination.
Yeah.
And this smaller wheel actually came from a local family, the Knutson family. And Mrs. Knutson was a great knitter, and so this has got a huge local history to it also.
Well, and these in the early days were probably, they spun very, very fine linen, flax, and to make it into linen. And then that was woven into shirts, garments, also was many times the warp that then they wove the coverlets or blankets or sheets, I mean almost anything. So it spins very fine, very fine.
Completely different world than we're accustomed to, isn't it? And Kathy, I just think it's neat that you've had a lifetime of understanding, even looking at this and being as old as it is, you have an idea of kind of what they would have had to do. Where a lot of people in this era could look at this. I'm not sure I would have guessed what it was for. It could have been a workbench for all I knew, and so.
Yeah, many times when I'm demonstrating spinning, people will come up and they say, "Oh, look, she's looming," or so. But kids are wonderful. They seem to know. If we're out demonstrating, a kid will come up and say, "Oh, I love your spinning wheel," and they know the process and they've heard about it in school. So that's exciting.
So where do you do it that kids can watch you and see you? And
I'm in a Weavers and Spinners group. It's called Little Sioux Weavers and Spinners. We're in about a 60-mile radius of Spencer.
Okay.
So we demonstrate at the Clay County Fair.
Okay.
Through the Art Center in Arts on Grand in Spencer. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Just fascinating. Mary, isn't it fun to... We both get to learn.
Oh, I've learned so much. I always do from Kathy, but I've never been around when you've talked about the spinning and the knitting and stuff like that. We're usually talking about antiques and Okoboji history and stuff like that.
That's right.
This is just fascinating, and I'm so happy that you were able to come today to give us insight into this fabulous machine.
It is fabulous.
Now I've had a great appreciation for it just because of when it came and where it came from and who it came with.
Yeah.
But now knowing how it actually worked, it's even cooler.
And the work that went into it to make a simple pair of socks or a hat to be out in the elements, and I mean, incredible.
Well, and the amazing thing is these were made and built to last.
Yeah.
Now a machine like that is plastic.
Yeah.
I just got a new spinning wheel. I love it. It's adorable, but it's plastic.
Oh yeah.
It's cute, and it's a little workhorse, but I'll take my wood one any day.
Yeah. They didn't make things that you would have to replace it in a couple, 3 years. This is a lifetime commitment, or in this case, several lifetimes sitting there. So.
Yeah. Or in the case of me knitting you a sweater, at least 4 lifetimes.
Yeah, there's a generation in there at least. Oh, well, Kathy, thank you
for
joining us, instructing us here today, and Mary, awesome. Thank you for inviting me in. And
yeah. Well, thanks for coming, Jeff. It's always a hoot.
I'll be looking for that sweater around Christmas time.
Good luck. Yeah. In your dreams, Jeff. In your dreams.
Maybe we can knit it up here on this machine.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be a special we'll be doing later in the year. So our thanks to Kathy Barth here with us today. Of course, Mary Dreier here at the Dickinson County Museum. We thank them for joining us. We thank you, as always, for watching us right here on Okoboji Broadcast. Okoboji Broadcast from the studios at historic Arnold's Park Amusement Park is brought to you in part by the Scott Troutman State Farm Agency in Spirit Lake, Quest Wealth Management, a financial advisory practice of Ameriprise Financial Services, advisor Jan Spielman, AJ Spielman, and Erica Wachholz. Ducky's Marine and Motorsports Repair in Spirit Lake. Bank Midwest, dream big, plan wisely, live well. Lakes Regional Healthcare and a Vera partner. Ruthven Locker at the lake, where carnivores are welcome on Hill Avenue in Spirit Lake. Beck Engineering in Spirit Lake. Be Radiant Laser Skin Studio in the Okoboji Plaza in Okoboji.